our mom is certainly one to talk about meltdowns when she threw a fit
Oh, yes.
when we were unable to eat at a specific hamburger restaurant in Vienna.
It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. And I'm your host, Sean Behrens. And you can visit thegermanyexperience.de for all the information about the show. You can go through the podcast episodes and also get in touch at thegermanyexperience.de/contact. So here we are in a brand new lockdown. It's November 2020 and we're stuck at home again, albeit not as bad as before. Now, if you're planning on progressing your German learning, especially since maybe your classes have been cancelled or maybe the online thing is not working for you, you could consider German Uncovered. It's a story-based German course, and a few weeks ago I spoke to one of the co-creators of the course, Kirsten. It was a few episodes ago, and here's just a brief summary of what she said about what story-based learning is and also a bit of information about the course.
I guess what this course does really well and what story-based learning does really well is keeps you interested beyond a little dialogue in a textbook. The way the story incorporates in German Uncovered is we've got 20 chapters and you kind of follow your characters. So you don't think so much about, learning, right? It's more about actually using the language. As the chapters progress, we get a little bit more complex, a little bit more complicated in the language, but we don't baby our readers. It gives you as the learner a lot of freedom to explore and figure things out before I come in and explain them. What I get to do as a teacher and what you get to do as the learner is you get to kind of look at it and go, I wonder why this ending changes. Why does this word keep doing this thing? And that question in your mind is such a magical learning thing. It's so good because it makes you much more receptive to the rule.
So if you're interested, you can sign up for the free course to see if story-based learning is for you, or you can just jump right in and sign up for German Uncovered. Links to the free course and to German Uncovered are in the show notes. And of course, I am an affiliate partner of Fluent Language, so I do get a commission if you sign up for the German Uncovered course using my link. So I hope that Lockdown Light is treating you okay. Of course, there's all kinds of restrictions in place now about what you can do, how many people you can meet with, whether you can have public events, and pretty much everything is not allowed, not permitted, verboten at the moment. But how about this news report from imexpat.de? The headline is, Munich police shut down child's birthday party with 100 plus guests. Who is this child? I don't even know if I could get 100 people to come to a party that I throw. 100 guests for a 1-year-old. More than 100 people gathered together in a restaurant in Munich last Friday to celebrate the first birthday of an apparently very popular child. After receiving a number of calls, police arrived at the restaurant on Grünwalder Straße in Obergiesing at 4:30 p.m. and shut down the party, clearing the restaurant and sending everyone home. Why, people? When you find out that there's a partial lockdown coming, you know what's allowed and what's not. Even if so things were a bit unclear. Maybe there was some, like whether it's 5 people you can meet with, whether it's 10 people, whether it's more than one family at a time or in total, whatever. There was some confusion, I'll give you that. But 100 people coming to a restaurant is probably verboten. That. You know it. And if you don't, the restaurant knows that. So the report continues, both the restaurant's manager and the party's organizer stand accused of violating the Bavarian Infection Protocol Ordinance. Oh, I need to find out what that is in German. Bavarian Infection Protocol Ordinance. What is that? So I'm just looking it up here to see what that is because I just know it's going to be an amazing German word. Let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. I found it on a Rechtsgrundlagen page from some Bayern.de page. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's Infektionsschutzmaßnahmenverordnung. What a wonderful word. The Germans never cease to amaze. So there you go. In English, that would be the Bavarian Infection Protocol Ordinance. If there's one thing the Germans have been good about at handling this coronavirus pandemic, it's the words that they've been creating. Okay, so 100 people broken up at a kid's party. Don't do it, people. Just stay at home. Just like, what if you've got, just maybe reschedule things for later on when the numbers have maybe calmed down a bit. Now, in the last episode, I spoke with the guys from the podcast, and it was the Ask a German episode, and it was a lot of fun. I've had a lot of feedback. But one thing that I really enjoyed is on my Instagram, where I'm the.germany.experience. You can follow me there. I posted about one of the words that we came up with during that episode, and it is the word for a crime that we invented, Warteschlangenungeduldigkeit. And that basically translates to waiting line impatience. And what I posted was that this was a new crime that we came up with. And the definition that I gave to the crime is any act in a German line, usually a supermarket, where people push in front of others or when they push ahead of others when a new cashier opens up. It was one of the things that we spoke about in the episode. And if you haven't listened to it, you should definitely go and listen to that. And I got quite a few responses to that Instagram post. So I'm just going to read you a few. Christina Schuh _86, who is a German, writes this. As a German, I can say I have almost given up on this topic because it's so ridiculous when a new checkout opens and people aggressively, from behind in line, storm towards it. I just roll my eyes and shake my head. Super rare that people will offer, go ahead, you were in front of me. So what I loved about this is finding out that Germans feel the same way about this whole thing. Sunflower _UX wrote, Lordy, I just use my shopping cart defensively, especially in Corona times. That is one way to it. Beth in Germany agreed that this definitely should be a law. And Amy Holt 11, who asked the question in the first place for the episode, wrote, maybe the Germans are so tired of all the rules that as soon as they get a chance to be reckless, they take it. I'm so tired of being polite, get out of my way, grandma. That's one theory. Thank you for that, Amy. And Sounding Lustig wrote, also the loud breath out. Yes. Yes, you always hear. Kelly Knapp 223 wrote, the rudest people in the world are Germans in a line. And another German, Timo Ausch, wrote, so you might ask why? It's very simple. Our days are packed. There is so much to do, and every second is planned. Efficiency is the keyword. So why bother waiting in line with other stupid people? Get your elbows out, push your carriage in the heels of the person in front of you so they know you're in a hurry. Search for the bell to demand another cashier to open, or simply shout it throughout the store. Complain about pensioners who show up after work as if they don't have the whole day to do it. Grocery shopping is not supposed to be fun. You feel it while you're rushing to throw your groceries in the carriage while paying at the same time, and the person behind you is already rolling their eyes. Yes, Timo. So Germans and foreigners alike talking about their experiences in shopping queues. So that was fantastic. And follow me on Instagram, The Germany Experience. All right, let's get on to this week's guests. They are actually two teenagers named Alex and Anna. A while back, I think in May, their mother Linda was a guest on the show. And she has a blog called Travel Teening, and she writes about traveling with teenagers. And that's what we discussed on her episode. So I thought it would be interesting to hear about it from the other side. And I invited her two teenage children, Anna and Alex, on the podcast. They lived in Northern Virginia before moving to Germany, and the plan was that they would be here for 3 years and do lots of traveling, which they did for the first half of their stay until coronavirus hit. I talked to them about their life in Germany and about traveling with family. Here are Anna and Alex. So at some point, about, I guess, 2.5 years ago, your parents came to you and said that there was another move on the card. So it was Sweden before, and now there was talk about moving to Germany. Anna, maybe you could give me an idea of how those discussions went. How did you find out that this was going to happen?
Well, I actually, it's kind of a funny story. So my parents, in our old house, we had kind of thin walls. And so my dad was on the phone talking to his sister. And I heard stuff about don't tell the kids. So I was like, I'm going to listen more.
Yeah, that's going to get your attention.
And I didn't find exactly what was going to happen, but I knew something was happening.
Right.
And a month or so later, they broke the news to us.
Okay. So they'd known for a month before they came to you with the information?
No, they'd known for 6 months.
What?
And waited to tell us before a family Christmas reunion.
And Alex, did Anna come to you during this time when she'd overheard that discussion and say to you, something is up?
She did not.
Wow, so you were in the dark.
Well, somewhat. I had my own thing that kind of had tipped me off as well. one of the annual Christmas card that we send out. Normally, my parents do a short write-up of sort of the year. And the very last sentence on that Christmas card had been, "The Kerrs are looking forward to a grand adventure in 2018."
Alarm bells.
And me, having heard no news of any grand adventure, be it a trip or otherwise, started to think that something might be up.
Yeah,
and
sure.
then a few weeks later, we were told, because our parents said, "Oh, we're going to a Christmas party and your relatives might be asking you about moving to Frankfurt." That's because we might be moving to Frankfurt.
And
Yeah.
okay, so that was when you found out that there was this move on the cards to Frankfurt. 6 months after they'd known about it, so that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me what your reaction was, Anna. Let's start with you. What was your reaction when you heard the news? How much did you know about Frankfurt, and how did you feel about the potential move?
I knew nothing about Frankfurt, but at the time, I was always saying Germany was my dream country to live, and I had no
Really?
basis off of this. I'd never even looked up pictures of Germany. I just, Germany was a part of my imagination for a second, and I just was like, yeah, I want to live in Germany. And then it actually happened, which was kind of weird. So I was really excited about that. Obviously, I was sad about leaving certain things behind, but I mean, it's a great opportunity. So
Yeah, it is. And what about you, Alex? What was your reaction?
Well, I had a somewhat different reaction to Anna, who immediately told all her friends and was very excited. We were told that the chances of us going were still, it wasn't for sure, and
Right.
that there was still a chance of it dropping out and that we may not end up going. And so I didn't really want to get my hopes up that we would be going. And so I didn't tell anyone until the month or two before we left school. None of my friends had any idea.
Wow, that's a bomb
And
to drop.
Yeah, especially since I didn't even tell them. One of my friend's parents asked me a question about it, and I, who had not told my friends, was kind of deer in headlights there and had to then explain to all my friends that, yeah, I was probably moving to Germany.
Wow, could that be more awkward? Well, that is one way to get. And how did they react? How did your friends react? Like they were happy, or?
Well, that's something. 8th grade was a difficult year, I'll say.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
at the end of it, I didn't have very many solid friendships. So I was pretty happy to be getting out of there because I didn't have many friends by the end of it. So I was happy. And so there were mixed reactions in my friend group because of that.
But you were glad to get a new start from the sound.
I was, yes.
Anna, how did your friends react? Was it also they were happy for you, or?
it was completely mixed because most of my friends were really sad, but there were a few of the more cultured kids who were happy for me. I have one good friend who moved to Germany actually a year before, and when she came back, I left, kind of high-fived each other there. But when she told everyone she was moving to Germany, that kind of already prepared people a little bit because they had a friend leave the friend group.
Yeah.
And when I left, they were like, oh, okay.
All right, another one going to Germany. Who cares? First of all, let me ask you, Alex. So you both are going to an international school.
Yes.
Yeah. And did you start that right away when you got to Germany?
Well, we moved in the summer, so our school's orientation was a week or two later, and then the school started the following week. So we only had 2 or 3 weeks of having no friends and nothing to do, which wasn't too bad. We went to the pool, we were unpacking, setting up our rooms and everything. And then once school started, we were able to sort of start getting to know people who lived around here.
Okay. So I'm interested, while we're on you, Alex, what was your first impressions of Germany when you arrived and spent those few weeks in the beginning?
Well, the largest thing then and still to this day is, of course, the language barrier. Having only been told that I was going to move to Germany 6 months before I picked up Duolingo and started learning the odd word or phrase, but really it's nothing like talking to actual Germans. So the hardest part was getting around, learning to just get places, buy food, just essential things that you would need to do every day. Other than that, there's this idea that Germany's and Europe is so very different from the US, which it is, but to me only became clear after living here for a long time.
Right.
You come here and there's this initial culture shock of, oh, these are all the things they do differently. And then after about a month, I started to become familiar with it, with the exception of the language. But then over time, I've noticed more things that are different just because they come up persistently. And I hadn't noticed it the first time because it was just a small thing. But when it happens continually over and over, I go, oh, that's something different. I hadn't realized that before. And so the list of things that are different just keeps growing the longer I'm here.
Give me some examples of those things that keep coming up where you go, wow, that's different.
I mean, there's a lot in terms of the transportation system, I think. The Germans are a lot more reliant on public transportation, which I am a fan of. I can't drive here because the driving age is higher than in the US. So I don't have any way to get myself around. I only have a bike and the train stations. But since the public transportation system is so extensive and well kept, it's really not a problem. I can get everywhere that I need to without having to be a pain asking my parents to drive me places constantly as I had to in the US.
Yeah. And Anna, your first impressions of Germany when you arrived, what was it like for you?
It was just all kind of really weird, which I mean, you can expect, but the first few weeks, it was really weird. My mom kept saying, "Alex is your only friend. Go do stuff with him," because we didn't know anyone, and we didn't want to make friends with our neighbors because they spoke German, and we didn't know how much English they spoke.
Sure.
And it was a bit overwhelming at first, but honestly, after a few weeks being in school, a few months even, I don't know, it was just pretty easy to fit in. I don't know if it's just the atmosphere of the kids at the international school or kind of the accepting feel of this town that has a lot of international school kids. It was just easier than I thought it would be.
And it sounds like you guys are pretty adaptable too, which I think helps from that perspective. What about German? How is your guys' German?
So in terms of schooling, what's surprising is the German department isn't the greatest at our school, but we do okay in terms of grades and we can get around. Just the other day, I helped a German lady at the train stop on my way back from CrossFit, and she was just asking about a ticket. It was simple, but I could never do that in the first week I moved here. And one of my friends, she is German, and I've just almost started talking to her in German as kind of a joke. But I mean, I have enough that I can make sentences and talk about my classes and my weekend to her.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that interests me, and something that I want to ask you guys. Maybe Anna, you can answer first. Is that you guys know that that you're here for 3 years, so you're developing friendships that you know are going to end in about a year's time. But not only that, you also know, like, I guess what must be in your mind is the question: do I need to put in all this time with German if I'm going to be going back to the States? Is that something that you have in your mind? And what is it like knowing that this is all going to end in a year? I mean, that sounds a little dark, right?
Yeah. No, honestly, it's really sad because some of these friendships I made here are stronger than the ones I've made in the States. And that probably is just because so many people are moving in and out of the school and people are a lot more accepting. But I try to not think about it too much because it is sad to think about. But in terms of the language, I wanted to take German when I was in 7th grade. When I didn't know, when I was going to go into 9th grade, I said I wanted to take German at my high school that I was supposed to go to. And although now when I'm moving back to the possible schools, I don't think they offer German, but it's a life language. I don't know. It's something useful. It works your brain, and although I might never even come back to Germany ever, hopefully, yeah, I do, but it's just kind of cool to know.
And I think it's a unique opportunity living in a country to learn that language, because that's the kind of learning that you can't do in a classroom or in courses.
Because I also take French, and although my German is technically a harder language, I'm submerged in the German culture and language that it's almost easier for me, because you're driving by signs and you see things and it's everywhere, rather than if I were in France, it would be the other way around, but it's just everywhere. So it's easier to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And what about you, Alex?
Well, it is, as you've said, a unique opportunity to learn German while living in Germany. And I've honestly learned more about English grammar learning foreign languages than I have learning English, because you grow up, you speak it, you learn what's the correct plural of a word and what isn't. You don't understand nuances of grammar because you don't learn them, you just understand them intuitively. And I took Spanish for a few years, and now I've taken German for a few years. Taking those two languages, I've learned more about the English language than I have in English classes, because I'm at the point where we're just doing literature comprehension and things like that. We're past the point of talking about what parts of grammar there are.
Right. So I want to switch over now to the traveling aspect. So one of the reasons that you guys traveled, according to your mom, Linda, who was on the podcast, is that your parents loved traveling, and they wanted to introduce you guys to some international traveling as well, traveling through Europe and so on. And so I think they wanted to also pass on that love of traveling, and also just have you get some of the benefits that they obviously got from traveling when they were kids. So I have to ask first, you guys have done a lot of traveling since you got to Germany, obviously before the coronavirus hit.
Yes.
But even then, I see you've done some trips after that. But just, Anna, just give me some ideas of what kind of travel you've done since you got here.
We've been so many places. I've lost track. Our school is so great at giving us breaks. We have a shorter summer, but throughout the school year, we have a lot of 1 week, 2 week breaks. Unlike the States, where you have Christmas in spring, we have a fall break. We have a ski break in February, because so many Europeans go skiing, and we have so many 4-day weekends. And so we take every single opportunity to go travel, even if it's a short car ride to another local German city, or even flying out.
So a lot of traveling. And how's that been for you guys?
They have definitely done a good job at kindling our love for traveling, because I absolutely love it. It's a great way to see other cultures, see how the world works. It's an amazing experience, and it's mind-blowing that we get to do this.
Yeah. What about for you, Alex?
I mean, I completely agree. Being in Germany, it's great, because a 2-hour to 3-hour plane ride in a circle from Germany hits just about anywhere in Europe, and that's easy to do, especially since we can also just get in a car ride and cross the border into Switzerland or France or Austria in under 12 hours. It's very easy to do, and so we've been to more countries than I had ever been to before, and visited all kinds of cities and seen things that you see in pictures and you see in movies, and you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then you actually get to go there, and it's either exactly as you imagined or perhaps underwhelming, but at least you've been there and you've seen it.
Exactly. So that's pretty cool. What has been your favorite travel experience since you've been here in Germany?
For me, my top two would be Prague in the Czech Republic and Split in Croatia. They were just Prague. Walking around the city, you just feel like you're in a Disney fairyland. I don't even know. It's almost like a magical city. I love it so much. And Split was a beachy town, and we were there for my birthday, so that was really nice. And it was one of our more relaxed trips, because we go to a lot of busy places like Paris, where there's so much to do and so little time to be there. But Split didn't have too much, and so every day was a bit more relaxed.
Right. Yeah, that's sometimes cool not to have those city trips where you're just rushing around the whole time, just where you can chill out. And your highlights, Alex?
I also enjoyed Prague. We did a blacksmithing experience while we were in Prague, which is something that I had been wanting to do for years and years, and I was finally able to do it in Prague, and it was very enjoyable and something that I would like to pursue if I can find the way. Additionally, I enjoyed Vienna, Austria, and I'm not exactly sure why. There was the architecture there was very beautiful, all these things dating back to the Habsburgs in the 1700s and the 1600s. All the history was something out of a storybook with all this betrayal and murder.
It's like Game of Thrones, basically.
It's like Game of Thrones, but real life. And so there was that, all of those things about Mozart, and it was just I thought it was a very lovely place.
Yeah. That's one of my highlights as well. I love Vienna. It's amazing. What is it like traveling with family?
Interesting. We often get tired of each other pretty quickly.
What?
I know, it's surprising.
I can't believe that.
And after a few days, sometimes we just do separate things. Sometimes me and my mom will go off to a certain museum, and Alex and my dad will go look at swords or something.
Right. Not interested in that, Anna?
I don't know. And so, yeah, that's sometimes hard, especially when we do road trips, when we drive there and we spend a whole week with each other, and then we have to spend a whole 5 hours in the car after that week of tension.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to have an experience of traveling with friends. I think this year I would finally be old enough, but kind of got stopped by Corona.
Yeah, that's ended some plans.
Yeah.
And for you, Alex, the traveling with family, annoying, not annoying?
Well, I don't have any frame of reference for anything different. I've only traveled with family, so it's really all I know. I've started to draft plans for trips with friends following our senior year in the hopes that a vaccine will be out and we'll be able to travel as something to do with us all together before we head our separate ways for university. But until then, it's probably going to be mostly traveling with family, which is better than not traveling, of course. But
Yes.
there are certainly its ups and downs. Primarily, there's a great difference of opinion in what to see and sometimes even how to see it. When we go to museums, Anna, for instance, doesn't enjoy museums very much. I like museums well enough, but I don't get to stay there very long because as soon as one activity is done, it's always off to the next one. We'd go to an art museum and we have to see the 4 paintings, and we see the 4 paintings and then we leave.
Check, and we're done.
And sometimes
That's kind of what we did with the Louvre.
Right.
Yeah, and the Louvre is huge. It takes you days or weeks to go see everything. And we went through and we saw a bunch of pictures, and then everyone was ready to leave. And I was just kind of like, but there's so much more that we haven't seen. But everyone was like, no, we're done. We don't want to look at art anymore. And I was just like, what can I do? I'm outnumbered.
Yeah. I find that answer interesting because when I was a teenager, my answer would have been museums are boring. And it's, but I only learned later on, like through travel, that how interesting these things are, and learning an appreciation for learning history. So Anna, I thought I would give you a chance to say something about this. Something that your mom said on the podcast episode that she was on. She spoke about, I think it was Paris, if I'm not mistaken, and she described you as having multiple meltdowns. I think it was.
I don't recall having multiple meltdowns in Paris.
Yeah, that's what she said. She said that you but so what she said was that there was a meltdown at the train station, I think it was. There was a meltdown.
I remember. Okay, the trains. Okay, that was scary. We were on our way to Paris, and we were supposed to take one train, and it was supposed to be from Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof to the Paris whatever station, and our train broke down because apparently there were no toilets, so they're like everyone off, and we got onto another one, and the second one broke down, and then we got onto this teeny tiny little train that had one little section of it, and it was so many people packed in because everyone was trying to get there, and I was worried. I don't know if I would call it a meltdown. I wouldn't go as far to say that. But
I can hear your mom laughing in the background. She's like, I don't know if I'd call it a meltdown, and she's just laughing in the background.
Yeah, it was concerning because I'm very gotta get there and let's make this simple and kind of let's get things done. And it was not like that. That transportation experience was not like that at all. So
and then if I remember the story correctly, you got to the hotel and God forbid there was no Wi-Fi. Apparently there was a problem with the Wi-Fi.
That's also scary.
Right.
But
what
again,
was worse, the train situation or the Wi-Fi situation?
I don't know. Both pretty bad, but probably the train because that was getting there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a meltdown. Again, it was me having concern and me being worried, but it wasn't a meltdown.
Okay, not a meltdown. So I just wanted to give you a chance to clear the air because your mom was definitely defining them as meltdowns. But I think it was important that we hear the other side of the story from you.
Well, might I interject real fast and say
yes,
that
please.
Our mom is certainly one to talk about meltdowns when she threw a fit.
Oh yes.
When we were unable to eat at a specific hamburger restaurant in Vienna.
Okay.
And she lost it. And we made a reservation for the next night, and we went back and had a good meal. But we went there, and it was full, and it was just unreal.
No,
what does a meltdown look?
That was a meltdown.
What does that look like? What does that look like for your mom? Does she just freak out?
Well, she got mad and was storming around and trying to find another burger restaurant, and eventually we ended up going into a grocery market and buying some pasta and just cooking pasta at the apartment. But my sister and my dad had split off and were like, we're not even going to deal with this. And so I was left alone with my mom just wandering angrily around our apartment in Vienna trying to find some food because she couldn't have a burger at the burger restaurant that we were going to go to.
Funny enough, the story didn't come up on her episode.
Oh, yeah,
I wonder why.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So here's a question for you guys. So for people who are traveling with their teenagers, what advice can you give to those parents, and maybe even your parents? What are the things they should do? What are the things they shouldn't do? Maybe we can start with you, Alex.
Well, I think we do a good job initially. Our parents ask us to research any place we go to and sort of come up with a list of things that we would like to see. So maybe some castle, some palace, some museum, a specific attraction, an event, whatever's going on at the time, and we kind of add it to a list. And then if people's lists match, then all the better. We make sure that we get to it during our trip. But that way, at least everyone has input on things they want to see. The thing is that for cities like Rome, cities like Paris, you go and there's too much to do in a week. It's not possible to hit everything. And so when we think back on our days in Paris, we would go to like 3 museums or 3 sites or all of that in one day. And that was sustained for 5 or 6 days. So by the end, we had been around each other and it was just, we were kind of done. So I think making sure that teenagers get input on what happens is certainly important, because I know that if a trip was planned and everything I wanted to do was just discarded and we only did what our parents wanted to do, I would be pretty unhappy. And then additionally, for longer trips that are maybe slightly more busy, just building in the occasional afternoon or morning or just a few hours of time to let teenagers go if they're old enough and responsible, obviously. Just maybe give them some free roam on the city to go walk by themselves or see something by themselves, or even to just sit somewhere and relax, to take a little bit of time away from the family just to collect themselves if necessary, and then be ready for the next day and the busy days full of museums and sites to commence.
Yeah. And what about you, Anna? What advice would you have?
Yeah, the same. And I like to sleep in a lot, and I always ask for at least 1 or 2 days where we can sleep in, because we often do walking tours in the morning. And I know that's a widespread thing amongst teenagers, sleeping in. So
Yeah.
main recommendation is build in days where you don't plan things in the morning, so they're at least somewhat more enjoyable throughout the day.
Yeah, that's good advice. I like that advice. So we need to start wrapping it up. But before we wrap it up, what I want to know from you, both of you, and we can start with you, Anna, is how has this whole experience changed you? I mean, there's a lot of changes that happens anyway for people your age over a space of 2 years. But what has Germany done, or being in Germany and this traveling, has it had an effect on you? Have you changed a lot?
Yeah, I feel like I'm completely different, and if I were to go back to my hometown, people would be surprised. I just feel more cultured now. When my dad would talk about the news at the dinner table, and he'd talk about foreign countries, and he'd talk about different politics, I was kind of just, it was in one ear out the other. But now I'm here, I'm experiencing it, I'm immersed in European culture, and I understand so much more now. And in America, I would hear an accent and I'd go crazy. Like, you'd hear a German accent, you hear a British accent, and it was like, oh, you have an accent, but it's so normal now. And that's just one example. But yeah, I feel honestly completely different.
Yeah. And you, Alex?
I mean, it is impossible to say, because I wasn't in the US during this time. I can't say what changes would have happened with or without Germany. I can tell that I've changed. I look back on middle school and my first few weeks of being here, and I just cringe at the things that I did and said. I can't believe I did that. And so I know now that I'm past that, and I feel like I'm more mature. And one thing that I mentioned before, the whole thing with the public transportation, being able to get on my bike and take a bike down to the train station and then just take the train into the city and meet my friends, and I can be gone for an entire afternoon and come back at night, and my parents don't have to leave the house. I feel that being able to do that has certainly helped me to become more independent and sort of more of an individual, because I don't feel like I have to depend upon parents for everything. At home, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything. There was no public transportation. If I wanted to go see friends, I'd have to be driven there. We'd have to figure out things with carpool and all this stuff that was just difficult to figure out, and sometimes made or broke going to meet someone. But now it's not a problem, because I can just get down to the train within a couple minutes and be off on my way. So that has made me feel a lot more responsible, because I can do things that I want to do when I want to do them without having to rely on anyone else. So I think that's certainly the biggest one that I can attribute to Germany for sure.
Right. And something I've heard from some other guests as well is that I think for teenagers here and for kids, there's a lot more freedom than you would have in a place like the United States of America.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have been amazing to talk to. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to sit down and talk. It's been very, very interesting to hear how things have gone for you, how your time has been. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and that is it for this week. I'll be back next week. And until then, stay home, stay healthy. Music in this episode by my band 10 Cent Janes. Additional music by Ryan Anderson. Until the end, I'll speak to you next week. Auf Wiederhören.